Good afternoon, President Malumed and Chancellor Scott and members of the board. This item before you is our final action item to adopt your 2010 legislative program, and this would be the 3 bills that would be part of your sponsored package of bills. Now, by way of background, because we have several new people, new board members, let me tell you a little bit about the process that got us to where we are today. This is a final step in the approval process to adopt these 3 proposals. And then I'll briefly summarize the bills because you've heard in detail what these bills propose to do, or these bill ideas. But for the benefit of our new members, I'll give them a quick snapshot of what it is we hope to pursue this year. The Government Relations Division annually initiates a process by which we review various legislative ideas, and we vet these ideas through what is called the Legislative Task Force. And this is a group of individuals, representatives from the Consultation Council, that spend a whole day with us, and we appreciate the time they give us in going through all the different proposals that come through the system that propose to make changes to state law. To address various issues concerning the community colleges. So we had this process begin in September, and we completed the process in October. After that, we came to the Board of Governors with 3 bills in November that we discussed and had questions answered, and then after that, we brought these proposals for full discussion at 2 Consultation Council meetings. So in other words, these ideas have been fully vetted and now are here before you to take final action and approval. But what they are, let me just briefly summarize the proposals. One is an online community college assessment proposal. As you recall, this was a proposal developed out of our technology division under the leadership of Vice Chancellor Patrick Perry and Vice Chancellor Linda Michalowski to make available an online assessment tool to colleges that are interested in using that tool. If they choose to use this online assessment, it would be available to them free of charge. That would be the incentive for them to move towards this online centralized assessment tool. The initial funding and development has come from a Hewlett Foundation grant, which has been approved at, is it $500,000? And Gates Foundation, which approved the development of this proposal, the funding to develop this proposal. So we are not seeking state funds to launch this. What we are attempting to do by introducing this legislation is, for one, put it in state statute so at least we are able to articulate that this is an available program, and for future funding purposes, once it's up and running, we will be able to then look to the state and other sources, including the federal government, to help support this on an ongoing basis. A couple of other benefits to this proposal is, one, if the colleges choose to use this online assessment, they then are able to save the resources they would otherwise have to spend on their own local assessment tool that can then be redirected to other critical priorities during this difficult fiscal time. Another benefit is that by gaining access to this online tool, local colleges can also tap into other online assessments, such as the K-12 California Standards Test that's given to students in the 11th grade, the early assessment tests that's available to students in 11th grade. So essentially, they would have access to multiple measures that basically help place students in the appropriate classes so that they can succeed. So I think most importantly, this helps us really explore what we can do online, and I think it's one of those projects that in the long run is going to be very instructive in helping us determine how we can use these technologies to better serve students. So that's one bill. We have one legislator who's expressed interest, and this is Assembly Member Marty Block, and he's quite eager to introduce this bill if in fact you approve it today. The second bill is a report streamlining bill. This is an efficiency bill. Actually, all of our bills are efficiency bills, since that's the environment in which we're dealing. But this bill right now, the Chancellor's Office is required to submit about 43 reports every year. As you can imagine, this takes a lot of time and staff resources, and it's been difficult to keep up with this responsibility. What we have done is we've done a thorough assessment of each of these reports and tried to determine whether or not it makes sense to do some of these reports biannually, or whether some of these reports can be consolidated to improve efficiencies. And what we've come up with is a proposal to make changes to 11 of these reports, eliminating 5 reports that are no longer requirements. They're still in the books, but a lot of times people think we're still required to submit reports. We've consolidated 2 reports, so a total of 11 reports will be either eliminated, consolidated, or proposed to make biannual. The details of all that are in your packet. There's a chart that lists every single report that we're proposing to make changes to. The third proposal is a little different. This is a federal proposal that we don't normally address within our legislative task force, but one of the efforts we've been trying to do is to consolidate our state and federal program, and I'm delighted that Valerie Purnell, our new Assistant Vice Chancellor, will be joining us to make this one of her top priorities, and that's the Federal Veterans Earmark. She'll give you fuller details about this, where it's at in the process, and what we need to do in terms of advocacy tomorrow when she gives her first report on federal relations, and at that point I'll give her a more appropriate introduction. But for purposes of today, this is basically a federal earmark request that we're at the very beginning of the process. We would need to get our requests in by early February. We're looking to ask Senator Dianne Feinstein to carry this earmark, primarily because then the funding would be available to all colleges in the state. And we're asking for $3.5 million, and this would be let on a competitive basis to the colleges that meet the specified requirements, primarily those colleges that serve the greatest number of returning veterans who choose to go to a community college. So this proposal has obviously gained momentum, and we have taken and heard from the board members, from you who have expressed strong interest in the veterans. We're obviously going to need a lot of support to carry this through and hopefully succeed in getting this funded. But we also think that we are going to look for opportunities to leverage this funding, if we get it, to expand into other areas that support veterans' issues. So those are the 3 bills, or the 3 proposals, and I respectfully ask your consideration and approval of this package.
Thank you. Vice President?
Just a question, and thank you for that report. I think those are all well thought out. Just a question on the veterans piece. When you say a $3.5 million earmark, is that an earmark for the system here that then would take applications from the colleges? Are you talking about a $3.5 million earmark to the Department of Veterans Affairs that local colleges would apply directly to there?
We're talking about a $3.5 million grant or funding source to the Chancellor's office to administer a competitive grant program.
Great.
That's excellent. You know, I would just move things along. I would make a motion to, on all of these items.
Second.
I second. Got it.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments?
I have a question, if I may.
Good job.
Member Ramos?
Thank you. The $3.5 million figure, is that a one-time only startup cost incursion? What would happen for sustainability? What would be the planning, the thinking behind ensuring that there would be resources to see it forward in years 2, 3, 4, and et cetera?
Well, and that's a really good question, because all our eyes are on the federal government. What this would do is we'd get some early seed funding to be able to develop this kind of effort, and then we would use this to leverage to hopefully, if the American Graduation Initiative proposal is approved by Congress, there are veterans components to that proposal, and we would seek to leverage this funding and get further funding, which that funding could last up to 10 years. So, and then eventually when the state pulls itself out of this economic downturn, we'd want to look to the state to further support these efforts, which are critical to California.
I think I know the answer to this
The
follow-up.
answer is.
But would it be wiser for us to think about some kind of, or even possible to think about a multi-year ask that would at least ensure some consolidated, lead time to ramp up towards sustainability. I just worry that that money, while it's a significant amount of money, could go very quickly. And this is a very important piece of work that I certainly support. I would want to ensure that it's done correctly and sustained over time. So
The
I
way
don't-
in which earmarks work, they don't usually, it's through the budget process, so it's an annual appropriation. I think that we'd be interested in ideas, and that's one of the, will be Valerie's highest priority in looking at ways to sustain this funding. This is only one piece in a multi-strategy approach to dealing with this veterans challenge in California. So I think that those are exactly the kinds of questions we're going to be exploring. And Valerie has been on board now for a week, and so these are the types of issues that we're going to look into and hopefully look at it much more broadly than just an earmark. Earmarks tend to be narrow, but if you get your foot in the door, sometimes you can use that to leverage other opportunities.
Thank you.
I have one more announcement I'd like to make for dinner tonight.
Wait, before, maybe we should vote.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
good idea. We can vote it.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Okay.
Thank you. Jumped the gun there. Just want to let you know that in front of you, you have several biographies or short bios of legislators. These are the members who will be joining us for dinner tonight. And they're a group of legislators who are part of what's emerging as the Community College Legislative Caucus. So these are folks who are friends and very interested in getting to know all of you and learning how they can be as supportive as possible of the community colleges this upcoming legislative year.
Thank you. And my husband's in there, but his president pro tem called a retreat today from 3 to 8 p.m., so he won't be joining us. But I'll fill him in on everything. Thank you very much. Okay, we're on to 6.1. The update on the El Camino College Compton Education Center Special Trustee Peter Landsberger. Thank you for coming up here. And if you can introduce your,
Madam President, thank you
Other
very
person?
much. Chancellor, members of the board, I'm joined here today by Dr. Larry Cox, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Compton Community College District, and we're both very pleased to be here today, but frankly, a little timid because basically we only have good news, and we know that that's unusual in the current environment. But we're quite pleased about that. And at the outset, I really do need to thank Larry, the members of the elected board at Compton, the staff, the administrators, the faculty at Compton, who have really been doing all the hard work that has resulted in what is, as I say, good news to report to you today. I realized in thinking about my presentation today that there are several new board members who probably are wondering, why is Compton coming before the Board of Governors? And so I'm going to start briefly with the down years, and they were very low down years, and go all the way back to 2004 when legislation created the special trustee position for the Compton Community College District, largely because of lack of fiscal integrity and very serious governance problems at Compton that had been accumulating over many years. So this was the culmination of a long series of sad and unfortunate events. And that legislation authorized the state chancellor to set aside the authority of the elected board at Compton and to put into place a special trustee who would be delegated all of the powers, authorities, and duties of the board. And that has been the case since 2004, now for going on 5.5 years, a long period of time. In 2005, to start to put the icing on the cake, the Accrediting Commission concluded that Compton College, the single college that was governed by the Compton Board and the Compton District, no longer met the standards for accreditation and began action to strip the college of its accreditation. With that, a new legislative effort was initiated by then Assemblyman Dimely to pass what we all call AB 318. And that measure, shepherded through the Senate and significantly refined by then Senator Jack Scott, was extremely important to Compton because it set the basic framework under which we operate today. It establishes three major things: a framework for the Compton District to enter into a partnership with an accredited institution. That institution turned out to be El Camino College, so that the doors could be kept open and the students in the Compton community and surrounding communities would continue to be served by an institution that could offer them instruction that was transferable and eligible for financial aid, et cetera. A special stabilization program and what's called advanced apportionment, so that the mass exodus of students when the college lost its accreditation, which was predicted and in fact occurred, would not automatically financially cause the financial collapse of the Compton District, and a $30 million line of credit from the state so that Compton would have capital with which to invest in rebuilding its systems, rebuilding its administration in particular, and ensuring that it had a real opportunity for future success. I believe what Najeri is now passing out is my written report, which I'm not going to go through in excruciating detail, but I would like to review the highlights, because this now is the good years, the recovery story, which started really in 2006, which was the nadir. The August of 2006 is when Compton College was stripped of its accreditation. That was the month in which El Camino College took over as the partner of the Compton Community College District and the operator of the El Camino College Compton Center, and in which really we started to climb out of the hole. As you'll see in that report, and I'll run through it quickly, since that nadir, where in the summer of 2004, we generated 343 FTES, students wondering if the credits they were earning that summer would actually transfer. Since then, semester after semester, we have begun to rebuild the enrollment with what frankly at times has been startling alacrity, 40% increases semester over semester, repeated over and over again. And we're continuing to do that, of course. We're looking forward to next year getting back to the level that Compton was at its very highest in all of history. So the enrollment is coming back. It was also extremely important to hire a full cadre of administrators, and that started with, at the top, with the chief executive. We were lucky to get Larry now a little more than a year ago, about a year, July. And we have a full complement of deans, directors, and other managers, the most recent addition being a new and very capable chief business officer who has been extraordinarily important in our most recent recovery. So we've now got an administrative team in place. Our relationship with El Camino is continuing to evolve and prosper. As in any relationship, there are always tensions and troubles. In my marriage, that's the case. I'm sure you've had similar experiences. It's true with El Camino, but we continue to work effectively together, and we're in fact putting in some major changes that are going to help shift our focus from recovery in terms of just doing the basics correctly to really now moving towards what do we need to do to get the El Camino Center ready for an application for accreditation as an independent institution on its own. And that's our next challenge. I'm very pleased to report to you that in November of last year, 3 new board members were elected to the Compton Board. We had actually several contested seats. All the seats were contested, which is a very good sign, because one of the reasons for Compton's demise was the fact that the community stopped paying attention. Well, they're clearly paying attention now. We've got 3 new board members supplementing the 2 who are already there. One of the most recent vacancies, by the way, was created when one of our board members got elected to the Compton City Council. So there's some returning respect for that board. And now, for the first time in 5 years at least all the time that I've been associated, we have a full board at Compton, and they're taking seriously the need to move that board together as a highly functioning team that can ensure that when there is a new college, they're ready to catch the ball when it's thrown and govern that institution. We are on 6-month intervals visited by teams of professionals dispatched by the Fiscal Crisis and Management Assistance Team, which is generally called FCMAT. It's really an organization that grew out of K-12 but has taken on a community college portfolio. They are there under AB 318 essentially to do performance audits of Compton. And as you can imagine, when they first came in 2006, the scores that they assigned were really abysmally low. Our most recent visit was in November of 2009. I can confidently tell you, because I've seen drafts of their report, that our scores this time around are really quite good, in many areas now meeting the standard that FCMAT has set for eventual return of local control to Compton. There's a certain threshold set in AB 318 and in the FCMAT standards that we need to meet and sustain for several years, and it looks like we're getting there, to the point that Larry has talked with the leadership at FCMAT about changing the whole focus of the FCMAT visits from this kind of basic bread and butter, are we doing what we need to do in a minimally acceptable way, to also aligning with the accreditation standards so that they too would be assisting us and the El Camino Center in moving in that direction. Other signs of continuing health, for the first time in at least 3 years, our annual audit by external auditors was delivered on time, something that in the past the auditors were not able to do. And unlike the 3 previous audits, this audit is an unqualified audit. Earlier audits all had 1 or more qualifications in it. In terms of finances, and this is part of the good news we're a little timid about, we ended last year with ending balances that exceeded 5% of our general fund expenditures, which, as you know, is the benchmark for reserves and contingencies. We expect this year we will do the same. In fact, the budget projects that we will have an increase in our ending balance even this year. Finally, a couple of more points. Well, actually, a major point. Facilities issues continue to be a very, very serious concern at Compton. This is a long neglected campus. Virtually all of our infrastructure needs to be replaced: heating, communications, electricity, sewers, water, you name it. It needs very, very substantial work. Thanks to the concerted help of your staff here in the Chancellor's office, we were awarded the first phase of a total $50 million infrastructure replacement project. I was just informed today by Fred Harris that the second phase of that looks like it's going to get funded as well as a project for another building that needs substantial work, our Allied Health building. So we're beginning to come back there as well, but it continues to be something that, frankly, I personally worry about. So unless there are any questions from you, I would like to thank all of you, to thank the Chancellor and his staff, in particular, Eric Skinner and Fred Harris in finance and facilities, who have been extraordinarily and continuously supportive. And thank you again for the opportunity to give you this brief update.
Would Dr. Cox like to say any words? I didn't know.
Well, I'd just like to also join Peter in thanking the Chancellor and his staff, and certainly thank you for listening to us. And I think Peter has been very modest. He's been kind in saying that I've done a good job, but you hired me to do that. So I expected as much of myself. But Peter is, with his guidance and certainly the help from El Camino, we've managed to do quite a good job. My staff has been excellent this past year.
Oh, good. Well, we're very happy you're both here because your education center is on our minds, I would say, almost all the time. So we're always wondering how things are going. So thank you for the report. And I'm wondering if there's any questions or comments. I'll have Board Member Izumi go first.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Peter, for the great update and for the leadership at Compton right now. We really appreciate that. I just want to say that now with Member Haley and I, when we first got on the board a number of years ago, I mean, I think the very first thing that was kind of dumped on our laps was Compton, and you know, we didn't know that was the hot potato we were going to be facing at that time.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, you know, we get on the board and we have to face this issue. And I remember, you know, all of the many years, you know, under Chancellor Drummond and all the positive steps that were made, and it's come to this point that I think that, you know, it just is a huge testimony to, you know, what the Chancellor's office under the various chancellors have done, the staff, and certainly under what you've done, Peter, as a special trustee, and also the leadership, the local leadership at Compton, and people coming together to, you know, right this ship. And so I remember in 2004 when we were first on the board that getting to this point seemed like it was going to be a very far off time, but the fact that we're sitting here and it's come to this is, again, great testimony, and congratulations to all of you.
Mm-hmm. Vice President Himmelstein.
Yes, I also, like you, Lance, I had just gotten to the governor's office, and I was dispatched down to Compton, and I think it was 2005, actually, and I got there the day that the chief of police of your police force was relieved of his duties for all kinds of awful things. But I remember in particular the infrastructure that you're talking about was just terrible, and I'm glad to hear that you're on the road to doing something about it. But having been so close to that for a few weeks, I just want to say congratulations. It's a huge relief. Good work.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Board Member Haley, and then Thomas.
I just wanted to not reiterate what Lance said about our initial concern about what was happening at Compton. And I live very close and near your community, and was so sad to see the deterioration. And it is exceptionally wonderful at this point to have you all feeling so strong. And we just want to encourage you every way that a board can. And I'm glad to hear that your community is giving you the kind of support and leadership that it needed to. And Peter, thank you for being the special trustee. It's been a challenge. And we really appreciate the leadership that you have offered to that college and to our districts around the state.
Thank you very much.
Board Member Thomas.
Thank you. I want to join the other board members in congratulating you on your accomplishments to date, and was curious to know if you've experienced at Compton any of the scaling back that we're hearing about other colleges and districts throughout the state because of financial, what's the right word? Chancellor Scott.
Adversity might be a good word.
The term that, workload reductions, I believe, is the term that has been coined, and that if you're also experiencing those, because I'm seeing some significant increases in FTES, and wondering if you anticipate some workload reductions.
Yes. Well, it's a strategy I would not recommend to any other college, but we actually took our hits several years earlier, and because of AB 318 and the special stabilization in 318, our enrollment growth has actually been funded. So in a paradoxical way, we're somewhat shielded, we are significantly shielded from the storm around us. Now we have suffered some fairly serious hits in the categorical program because we're not protected there. But thanks to the fact that we have been able to increase revenue at the same time, maintain our costs at a continuing reasonable level, we've been able in many ways to backfill much of the categorical cuts without adversely affecting our overall operation. By the way, just to relate to your earlier discussion, and I think Eric Skinner gave me the number earlier, a year or two ago, I think our 50% law number was in the 30s, something like that, in part because we had cut out everything, cut so many classes and had such a decline in enrollment. We have an agreed-upon plan to return to compliance with the 50% law. It's a 5-year plan that was signed off by the faculty at the institution. And we are now ahead of that plan, and this year expect to be in the mid to the upper mid 40% from 30-something. Eric, what was the precise number you gave me?
I think,
Or maybe it was,
your latest report says it's a little over 44%.
okay, but it was
B9 was 38%.
38%. So we're moving from 38% to 44%. We expect to be 46% at least next year and in compliance soon thereafter.
Thank you. Member Davis-Lyman, and then Vice President Himmelstein again.
It's exciting to have you here today and to hear your report. And you're kind of the new people on the block, right? And there are so many faculty classified and some administrators still at the college that went through this kind of war, like war zone. And I bet for them it is extremely gratifying. Every time I see them, they have carried this passion for the students, this commitment to the community through a horrific time. And so for them as well as you, it's got to be an extremely gratifying time.
Well, that's probably the appropriate place to close because this would not have been possible without the continuing support and hard work of the faculty and staff at the institution. They had a lot of reason to be negative and bitter and hostile, and that they didn't succumb to that. The board members at first were quite antagonistic. In fact, when I first came to Compton, they were sitting in the audience. They're now at the board table. They are seriously engaged upon becoming a very effective and good team, and they they put behind them whatever hostility they had to the state, which was the messenger to come in and say, this is over, this is not going any further. So the fact that they've come together locally is hugely important and really the most important.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add, though, the categorical issue has hurt us some because we didn't have a reserve of sorts. I got a little bit more surplus than we had, but we'll probably end up putting somewhere around $1 million more in the categoricals as a result of the cutbacks. So it hurts us some, but we're in the thick of things and we're holding our heads high. So
I know the heart of a lot of your people in your community is with you.
absolutely, morale is very high, and we're very excited about that.
Great. Vice President Himmelstein.
Dr. Cox or Peter, I forgot to ask, but one bright spot when I went down there in 2000 I'm curious, was a brand-new baseball field built by Major League Baseball.
That's
And
right.
Darryl Miller,
Major.
who I went down, spent some time with down there. It was like this beacon of hope. Is that still there, and are they doing well?
It's still there. It is a wonderful facility. I have to confess, though, that in part because of all the turmoil, the college has not taken advantage of that facility to establish a really good partnership with them. That's on the agenda for the future,
Good.
though. We need to do that.
Okay.
And
Well,
I,
we'll tell Darryl you said hello.
I spent a lot of time with them there, so, yeah.
and I do have a question about the Board of Trustees. You mentioned it a little bit. So they're sitting up there, do you have your meeting and they're participating?
Absolutely. In fact, until July of last year, I was chairing all the board meetings. I was, in essence, the sole trustee. And what I've told them all along is that my druthers is that incrementally the special trustee, whether it's me or somebody in the future, moves further and further to the side, and that they take on more and more of the actual responsibility. So a board member started chairing the meeting in July. They've just elected a new chair. They make motions and second motions. They are now participating in closed session as a normal board would. And wherever possible, I defer to their judgment. And we haven't come across a situation so far where I've had to, overrule them or go against the majority will. And there are times when I have to step in and provide a little more forceful guidance than otherwise would be ultimately desirable. But I think that will quickly evaporate, and they'll get to a point where they're riding the bicycle without anybody holding the seat.
Well, that's a big change. Thank you. Thank you for your report. Thank you for coming up here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6.2, Paul Lanning will present. Hello.
Hello. Congratulations on your ascendancy.
Thank you.
Happy New Year to everybody. I want to introduce real quickly, first of all, I'm Paul Lanning, President and CEO of the Foundation for California Community Colleges, for those of you who are new to the board. To my right is Carrie Wood. She is the Vice President for Resource Development. And to my left is Keitha Mills, the Chief Financial Officer for the Foundation. And sometime back, we discussed the fact that the audited financials would be presented at this meeting. I've received a number of questions on some other topics, so I want to have Carrie here as well to cover progress with the OSHA initiative, for example. But there's a couple of things I wanted to review with you real quickly before we launch into discussing financials, which of course can keep all of us so on the edge of our seats all the time. The Affinity magazine, you all should have received a copy in the mail. That is going around the table right now as well. The latest copy of that was published in the fall. And I'm also going to present to you two different versions that are college-specific versions. As we've done in the past, we did this year, where the center spread is college-specific for colleges that choose to participate in this project. So with that, I brought along both the Orange Coast College edition and the San Mateo Community College District edition for you to see two examples of what colleges and districts are doing with this publication. And again, all of this content is mirrored online as well, but it's one of our initiatives. Somebody mentioned earlier today the idea of an alumni association.
Those are just extras.
While we are not currently engaged in that project, there are a number of talks about such a project. This magazine is an initiative that certainly would dovetail very nicely with that idea, and there have been some preliminary talks with everybody from the Student Senate to the Chancellor's Office at various points about the idea of an alumni association. The Foundation is certainly here to help in any way we can with that, should it be of interest to the system. But this magazine, we hope, is an outreach tool that is of use to the colleges. We've gotten very good feedback on it from a number of sources, and it's in fact been awarded a couple of awards from national organizations as well. So we're very excited to hopefully be raising the bar for alumni outreach in our system with tools like this that are being generated currently. Two, I wanted to note that Members Haley and McDonald appeared at the October Network of California Community College Foundation Symposium in Manhattan Beach, and we appreciated them being able to stop by during that event. That's an annual event, as you all know, that is held each October. Next year, we'll be in Palm Springs in October, and you'll all receive, of course, advance notice of that event when it comes around. And Member Himmelstein, Vice President now Himmelstein, was at the Chancellor Circle event at Miracosta College in December, along with Chancellor Scott. So we appreciate your attendance there as well. For the record, the next Chancellor Circle event is at the Chino Community Center campus of Chaffey College on January 19th, next Tuesday. And Chancellor Scott and I both will be there, along with other members of the system from a variety of different representations, including CEOs, district trustees, and faculty Senate presidents from that region. In March, the Statewide Purchasing Officers Conference will occur in San Diego at the Catamaran Hotel. The dates for that are March 24th to 26th, and there will be a Chancellor Circle event there as well. In fact, Chancellor Scott will kick off that statewide conference. That is a gathering of all the purchasing officers from throughout the system, and it's an event that we actually started last year after being tagged on to a statewide California State University conference in previous years. Due to budget cuts, they suspended that conference last year, and we actually took that opportunity to program a community college specific conference, not unlike the Fall Symposium for Advancement Officers. And the feedback from the purchasing officers throughout the state has been absolutely tremendous on that. The bulk of the attendance costs that the purchasing officers would otherwise usually have to make to attend that is borne out by our Office Depot agreements. So we are underwriting the cost for most of the attendees at that conference, both hotel and travel. So it's been a very beneficial conference for all of them to be a part of, and this year we're looking forward to the Chancellor Circle event being tagged on to that, so that actually the purchasing officers really for the first time in a statewide forum will be able to hear from the Chancellor directly and to share their interests with the Chancellor as well. And then also on January 27th is the next foundation board meeting that will occur in San Francisco, and President Malumed, you should be receiving shortly the agenda for that meeting, as well as, of course, our two representatives, and Chancellor Scott will be there. That said, I want to touch on one other initiative, and actually I'm going to turn this over to Carrie Wood for this topic, but we were awarded in the fall a grant from the Kresge Foundation, which is a nationally known funder of a number of different higher education projects. Traditionally, they've done an awful lot of facilities work throughout the nation at four-year universities and a number of other nonprofit-oriented work. They have been in discussions with us for a number of months now about a system-wide capacity building initiative where we would be able to, with their support, look into in a very systematic and detailed way throughout the 110 colleges statewide, everything from earned income opportunities to fundraising efforts to outreach efforts that are occurring at the colleges, and to see what would be needed if we identified some opportunities, what would be needed to bring those opportunities to the fore for more colleges throughout our system. This is really a tremendous bookend to the OSHER initiative. And with that, Carrie, if you want to summarize that briefly, that would be great.
Sure. Let me move this up here. President Malumed, Chancellor Scott, and members of the Board of Governors, we're very excited, as Paul mentioned, about this study. It is really a first-time initiative in that all 110 community colleges will be part of the study, both from the college foundation perspective, but also from the college leadership perspective, in looking at earned income and other revenue-generating opportunities. Kresge, along with other funders, are looking at potentially teaming up once the results of the study are complete to look at how they might fund something larger to actually help us in the implementation of the findings of what we will surely find throughout the study, there are tremendous cost savings opportunities out there and tremendous opportunities for revenue generation, both utilizing the current assets that are on the college campuses and also increasing philanthropic funding. So the study has started. It will go through the end of April, and the findings will be made available in early May. And we will certainly keep you apprised of those findings as they come to us.
I should say this is in partnership with the Chancellor's Office. Both Vice Chancellor Skinner and Vice Chancellor Bruckman were involved in the initial phases of this in terms of selecting the consulting firm. Chancellor Scott has been involved in this from the start as well, and we view this as another in a series of partnerships between the Chancellor's Office and the Foundation to benefit the entire system. And with that said, we've never undertaken a project that would entail interviews with key officials at every single college in the entire state in such a short window of time. So as if the OSHA challenge wasn't enough, we thought we'd take on another one as well. And with that, we are underway with that. The kickoff meeting actually occurred just last week, and the interviews actually have already commenced as well, and a number of you will be contacted as well during the next couple of months while this is being phased in. So with that, we expect the results not only will be very useful to the system throughout the state, but also, as Carrie alluded to, there are a series of funders that are actually being aligned by Kresge to look at a significant potential of investment within our system at the colleges throughout the state. And that investment would go toward diversifying their opportunities to accrue revenue and to build philanthropic support in a time when, of course, we all realize that's never been more important. So this is a very exciting opportunity, I think, for all of us to take part in. And with that, I want to touch on, before we review the audited financials for the foundation for this past year, I want to touch on our progress with the OSHA initiative. And as you all heard, we received $1 million gift this morning as a result of Vice Chancellor Mian and Vice Chancellor Michalowski's work with us, and certainly with the benefactor. We're very excited that this is actually the second investment by Edison. There was a $200,000 gift announced over the summer down in Los Angeles, and Member Haley was at that ceremony, as was Member Baum. And that excitement was really palpable at that event. I think the Mayor Villaraigosa was at that event. I noted this last time I was here. The fact that that has now become, in effect, a $1.2 million investment over the last 6 months shows I think the momentum that we're starting to see in certain areas. I wish that I could say that it was in 110 different colleges and 110 different benefactors throughout the state, but we are seeing very good traction for the campaign. And this $1 million investment, again, resulting now in $1.2 million coming from Edison itself, kicks loose $600,000 more from the OSHA match. So that, in effect, becomes a $1.8 million commitment that Edison has made in partnership with OSHA to the system. That endowment investment is the single largest one we've seen so far outside of the Monty Toole gift, which was a combined gift spread across both the foundation and a couple of individual colleges. So we're seeing both, I think, the breadth and depth of this challenge in front of us, in the sense that a $1 million gift is very, very important to us, but it leaves us with 49 other millions yet to find. That said, we do have a significant dent in that. We're not where we'd like to be at this point, simply, but we are actually making significant progress. And every gift that is announced of magnitude like this Edison gift kicks loose more opportunities for us. And we're excited about the relationships that are being built and the benefits of this campaign, which will go well beyond the dollars that are actually invested. The relationships that are being developed. And quite frankly, this Kresge study would not have happened if it were not for the OSHA announcement that occurred last year. So with that, we have 18 months to go. So the pressure's on, and all of you can be exceedingly helpful with us in acting as spokespeople for this initiative, both with your own colleges and districts that you're in touch with on a regular basis, and as representatives from the statewide board. It's never been more important that we talk about this initiative, the OSHA challenge, and that we make significant progress at this time. Coming into the new year, this is the time to retrench and get moving on it yet again. And we could not start in a better way than to have this announcement that occurred today. And so we thank the Chancellor's Office profusely for their leadership in making sure this gift was announced today. The timing was absolutely perfect. And with that, I want to, first of all, are there any questions on any of the topics I just brushed over very, very briefly?
I have one. I don't think you told us how much money you've received towards the OSHA grant.
We have received just under $5 million.
Okay.
So that's good news and maybe not so good news, given we have 18 months left and we have $45 million to go. We do have a lot of work that's taken place over the last year that we are hopeful will make a big difference in this year's activities. 7 colleges have met their match or met their goals, and 30 other colleges have made contributions. And then we've, of course, we know that there's a lot out there that still has not yet been sent over and been invested in the fund.
Right. I've heard comments from some colleges that there's no incentive for them to send in their match money early. So they're holding on to it. They know they have it, and they will send it in because they're not going to earn interest.
And that's one of the debatable points. The sooner that money is submitted, the sooner it starts earning the interest that actually ultimately benefits the students. So monies that are submitted in the final year, actually we miss out on a year or two of students receiving scholarships if the money is held until it's invested at the very end. That said, because of that factor and some other factors, we know that there's probably at least double what we've, at least another $5 million that's already in the hopper within our system throughout the state, and that has not yet simply been transferred for a variety of reasons. And there are also other pledges, gifts, bequests, things of that nature that have simply not closed yet, but we know are in process. So there are a number of opportunities that make our outlook probably a lot more optimistic than it might sound if we say we're at 10% of goal. The reality is we think we're probably closer to 20% of goal, and in the first phase of the campaign where we literally had to build everything from scratch and communicate how this entire project was going to work. We're actually pretty optimistic about where we are given circumstances that we inherited certainly when this started. The economy certainly has not been our friend during that time either, and that's no excuse, but at the same time, it is a realistic assessment. That said, this year is the year that we need to have the rubber meet the road in a number of different areas throughout the state that have not yet taken part. But I will say that one of the very exciting things is every success, and I think Ambassador Vasquez mentioned this morning, every success begets more success. People want to be part of something that is successful, and we're seeing literally the successes breed upon themselves. Just last month, I visited Bakersfield College, which is one of the colleges that has completed its match, and did so very, very early on, in fact, with a significant plan gift, but is continuing now to raise funds toward the Osher Initiative with the idea that they want to help their two sister colleges within their own district with their goals because they don't have fundraising staff per se, and they don't have necessarily the apparatus in place to be able to pursue that goal. The fact that Bakersfield wants to be a leader not just in their own community but throughout their entire district and help their sister colleges is really indicative of, I think, the team spirit that we need in our system. At the same time, one of their neighboring colleges not in their district, I drove out to Taft the day after Bakersfield, and Taft has yet to make a dent. They've yet to start, but they literally just hired a new foundation director who I got the great chance to visit with a couple of times now, both at the symposium and then on this visit at Taft. And I should say, by the way, that I have no fear of going anywhere. If you want me to go to Taft, or if you want me to go to Butte, or if you want me to go to Southwestern, you name it, I will go talk to foundation boards, district trustees, you name it. But at Taft, we had the great opportunity to meet with the leaders in the administration at Taft, from President Duncan on down, as well as the foundation Board of Trustees during a foundation board meeting. And at that luncheon, we received a very firm commitment that they will not only work on this, they will meet their challenge, and that's just how it's going to be. And they have a can-do-it attitude in Taft that I think is pretty impressive. So that said, I think that we have a lot of progress that will be seen in the next 6 to 12 months that is very exciting, but not yet reportable per se. It's not on a spreadsheet, but we know it's out there. And that's something that I think in the next year we'll see a great indicator of.
Are there any other questions or comments from board members? Member Haley and Member Perez and Member Ramos.
Is there any problem with privacy for you to give us a list of the colleges and districts and how they're doing in terms of?
Not at all. No, we'd be happy to disseminate that.
I think that would be worthwhile for all of us.
We can provide that to the Secretary of the Board, but Carrie actually has that with her, but we can make copies available to all of you.
I think any of us would like to know that.
Certainly. I'll have that for you delivered tomorrow morning.
Perfect. Good.
Member Perez?
How are you doing as far as recruiting new board members?
We are, the goal that I have set in conjunction with the board, of course, is to expand our board from 5 to 9 this calendar year. We have 2 candidates identified that are being reviewed at the next foundation board meeting, and the goal is that a second pair would be identified after that. And as I've said, every year I've been in position, if there are any candidates of suggestion from this board, certainly we would love to interview them and vet their interest as well as their qualifications, certainly. But those two members are very highly qualified, and I expect that we'll be able to add them to the board in the coming weeks, and then the search will ensue. And we have some other candidates in mind, but the search will ensue in earnest for the next two. And I'm trying to do it in that way so that we retain that odd number for board voting purposes. I don't want an even number of board members. So that said, I hope to be at 7 by the end of the month.
And Member Ramos.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I'm particularly interested in this exciting line of work because clearly it's so important right now in this environment, but I think it sets a stage for a future that we all want to advance. My background is in organized philanthropy. I work with many of the leading California and national foundations, so that's another reason why I'm particularly intrigued by this strategy and opportunities to support you in that process. So I offer that support to the extent that it's appropriate and not a conflict with my other responsibilities and duties as a new board member. I'm really particularly impressed by the offer of some of my friends at the Kresge Foundation to work with you to bring to the table other funders. And given the press of time that Kelly has talked about, I'm convinced that that is probably going to be a strategy that you may have to amplify on all across the board. And I wonder if you share that view, and if you do, would it be possible for us to think about getting groups of health funders together in a package of conversations that would advance in kind of a unified way, arts and culture funders or science and math funders, education funders, and so on? It seems to me that if we were able to develop and wrap the strategy around that kind of approach, it would certainly be much more economical. And to your point, and Ambassador Vasquez's this morning, there's no energy like when people get excited together about something that seems to be promising and lending itself to success. So for all of those reasons, I would just urge you not to suggest that you haven't thought of it that way, to think economically and to think strategically about how to bring these funders together in clusters that logically support their natural interests.
And I appreciate that input, and in fact, that's exactly some of the strategies that we have, and I would welcome any contact or ideas that you could share with us beyond what we've already been engaged with. But we are engaged with a number of organizations and collectives of organizations, as you referenced. The statewide credit bureaus, for example, we're working with at a statewide level for all the 500 and some credit unions to come together potentially. The same with the farm bureaus, and in healthcare we've had that similar discussion as well. And so I think, quite simply, that's where we can play a role that the individual colleges can't in their efforts, and that's where we bring value, I think, to the proposition is the convening power, perhaps, that we have as a statewide organization, and the ability to bring those types of relationships to the table, from the Kresges to the major banks and utilities and so forth. So toward that end, I may want to pick your brain about that very topic in the near future.
Happy to have a conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. I don't think there's any more comments.
So with that, we'll launch into a review of our financials for the past fiscal year, and keep in mind that that is the year that ended June 30th of 2009. And Keitha Mills is here to review with us the financials that you all should have received a copy of prior to the meeting today.
Thank you, Paul. So I guess the first thing that I would say about our fiscal year 09 audit is that this was our first year with a new accounting firm. We engaged Gilbert Associates over the summer through a competitive RFP process, and honestly, we're really very pleased with that selection. Gilbert and Associates specializes in nonprofit audits and really raised the bar with us this year with really digging in, understanding who we are, understanding our operations, being able to offer best practice recommendations and kind of benchmark guidelines based on their work with other clients. So we were really pleased with that selection. The other thing that I would say is that this is the earliest that we have been able to complete our audit in a number of years. Our audit committee of our board approved this audit November 5th. Of this year, which is typically we're here in January trying to kind of finalize the audit. So we were very, very pleased to be able to complete the audit in that amount of time, especially given that we were working with a new group, and a new group that really had to get up to speed fast and understanding who we were. One of the things that you'll notice in this audit is that it is a one-year presentation versus a two-year comparative presentation. The reason for that is because, again, we started with the new audit firm, and their professional standards require that if they're going to show comparative with the prior year firm, there's an inordinate amount of work that has to go into that. So we chose to do a one-year presentation. So next year we will go back to a two-year presentation because both of those years will be audited by the same firm. I would also like to share with you that we were subject to what's called single audit requirements. Those requirements are a result of our organization receiving government funding contracts. Basically, the single audit requirements require the auditors to peel out specific programs and to apply kind of a heightened level of scrutiny to those programs. The program that was subject to the single audit was our TANF program, which is part of our Youth and Adult Services Department, and I'm pleased to report that there were no findings as a result of that increased scrutiny for that program, so that was good news. We were issued a standard, what they call management recommendation letter. The management recommendation letter basically stated that there were no significant deficiencies or significant findings. However, they did offer up kind of 3 best practice recommendations. Those recommendations were really geared towards some segregation of duty type issues, and that's really a result of us having a pretty lean shop in our accounting department. And you know, one of the controls in your accounting department is to be able to assign duties to various people for quality control checks. There were a couple of instances where we could do a better job of dividing up the duties, and we have accomplished that. We have adopted all 3 of the recommendations that came from the auditors. We were able to do that in one case by taking one of the duties and actually moving it out of the finance department altogether. So I think it was a good testament to the amount of teamwork that happens in our office as well. One other thing, I would also point you to the audit opinion for our audit report this year. There were a number of changes that were implemented this year as a result of our new audit firm. Most of those changes were really kind of format changes and presentation changes and things that we think really improve our audit report and improve the usability and readability of the audit report. One of the most significant changes is in our audit opinion and the fact that we do have what's called a qualified opinion this year. And typically when you hear an organization has a qualified opinion, that's not a good thing. We're the exception to that this year. Our qualification is a result of our participation in the CalPERS pension program. Generally accepted accounting principles require certain disclosure for entities that participate in a pension program. Because we participate in a government-sponsored pension program, CalPERS does not provide the information that is required for GAAP disclosure. So basically, CalPERS provides information for a government accounting standard disclosure, but not the generally accepted accounting disclosure. So we're kind of this anomaly organization that typically you don't have a non-government entity that's allowed to participate in a government pension program. We're that anomaly organization that has the ability to participate in the government-sponsored program. The problem is GAAP doesn't recognize us. So this is an instance where we should have had this qualification in our opinion since inception of our participation. So this was an instance where, again, Gilbert and Associates was really able to add some value and say, hey, guys, this really should be in here, and this is kind of to be in compliance with the accounting rules. The other thing that our auditors talked about was that this is an instance where when there are enough of these organizations that get this kind of qualification that really doesn't make sense, this would be a place where they could start lobbying the Financial Accounting Standards Boards for a kind of exception in that rule to be able to get rid of this qualification. So I know that was very technical, but I thought it was important that we kind of talk about that because you might hear that with other organizations and feel like that's not a favorable thing. I think at this point I would be happy to kind of walk through the report and talk about specific changes or format changes, but maybe at this point I might just open it up for questions and see if anybody has any specific questions about our audit report.
Are there any questions?
I have a question.
Chancellor Scott?
Probably someone here like Member Reed could explain this, but so point this to my lack of knowledge of accounting, but On page 4, where you have revenues, I noticed net assets released from restrictions. What is that?
Right. Sure. A number of our grants are multi-year grants where we will receive a very large amount of committed funding that will be basically expended over a long period of time. For example, the Gates Foundation funded our early college high school program, and they funded $4 million, and these aren't the right numbers, but I'm just going to provide for example purposes. They provided, say, $4 million that was going to be spent over a 2-year period of time. At the time that the commitment is made in year 1, the accounting rules require you to recognize that full commitment of $4 million as a temporarily restricted revenue stream. And then as you spend down and incur expenses against that commitment, you're able to recognize that revenue as unrestricted revenue, and it shows up as net assets released from restrictions. So it's
In other words, you're telling me that, like, if you have a 3-year grant, that the first 2 years you're unable to show it as an asset, but at the completion of the 3rd year, you show the total amount as an asset? Maybe I don't understand it.
It's a little technical. So the first year the revenue comes in, if you look at our income statement, there's 3 sections. There's unrestricted net assets, temporarily restricted net assets, and permanently restricted net assets. So in year 1, when that commitment is made, it's recognized as a temporarily restricted net asset. So, for example, on this page where it says under temporarily restricted net assets, foundation grants and contributions of $1.9 million, those are multi-year grants that we received in the current year. And then as those activities associated with those grants are successfully completed and costs are incurred, the revenue then gets deducted from this temporarily restricted category. So it says net assets released from restrictions. It gets deducted there, and then it gets counted in the net assets released from restrictions up above and unrestricted. So it gets kind of reclassified from your temporarily restricted to unrestricted as those activities incur. So what happens is that your subtotal of your unrestricted net assets refers to current year activity only, whereas temporarily restricted subtotal refers to activity that is going to happen over multiple years.
Okay, but I guess I see down here at the bottom, net assets at the beginning of the year and net assets at the end of the year. That's a $4 million difference. You know, I guess if, not that my wealth would be anywhere near that, but if my assets went down for a 10% drop,
Sure.
I might have a little concern there. Now,
Yeah.
I know there's a investment loss, which of course I'm sure occurred as a result of the bad market that we had in 2009, or at June 30th, 2009. So I understand investment loss, and that was investment loss based upon some kind of endowment of some kind, I gather. Some
Correct.
kind of,
It's our nursing investment fund.
yeah, okay. But I guess maybe somebody else understands this better than I, but I just looked at the net assets, and that wasn't an encouraging sign to me.
Yeah, so it looks like we had basically a net loss of $4 million is what it looks like. What that reflects is the spin down of several large multi-year grants, and it's 2 grants. One is the Gates Foundation, and one is the Moore Foundation. And both of those programs were funded in advance. All the activities are being completed on those programs, and then the programs are designed to be self-sustaining at the end. So you don't see continual funding coming in for those programs. Basically, it was a implementation grant to implement the program so that it then self-sustains going forward. So that's basically the revenues for that $4 million came in back in 2006 and 2007.
Okay, and it didn't, it didn't show up during those years in the revenues?
Yes, it would show up in the temporarily restricted revenue
Yeah,
section.
but not in this operating up here at the top. I understand that
Yes.
there was a $500,000 loss in terms of operating.
Correct.
The operational budget.
Correct.
It was just, I was having a lot of trouble with this temporarily restricted and permanently restricted and all of that. It kind of threw me off. I mean,
It's a very-
in
it's
my
a-
elemental understanding of accounting, it went beyond what I understood. So I'm asking this question, not putting anybody on the spot, but to clear up my failure to understand what all that meant.
So typically what we look at to kind of gauge annual operations and the success of our annual operations is that first section, which describes the unrestricted net asset activity. And so when we talk about how are we doing each year, that's the section that we focus on.
And I recall the year before you had a net gain. And I got some clue that you think you're moving in the right direction this fiscal year.
That's correct.
Okay, but I understood that, you know, I understand cash flow. I was just having trouble with the rest, but I think maybe you've explained it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Aren't you glad you asked? They always try and talk that way. Any other questions or comments?
I was out of the room, but I just had, the one question I just noticed was that, did you explain why one of them had a qualified opinion? One of the reports?
Oh, she did.
You did, okay, great. I'll get it on the side.
Thank you for coming forward.
Of course.
And sharing all this.
You bet.
Thank you, and I would say, certainly if there are topics you'd like me to delve into in a deeper level, as we've done in the past at the next Board of Governors meeting, I'm more than happy to do so. We have actually some pretty exciting things happening in a number of different areas of the foundation, as you know. So if there is a topic of great interest to this board, I'm more than happy to bring in the staff or the tools to do a presentation on any of those topics, should they be of interest. So with that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
I have one follow-up question. In regards to working with the Osher Foundation, and they're seeing your progress and the endeavors you're making to bring in these funds, do you continue to have a good relationship with them?
Yes, actually, either Carrie or I invariably are on the phone or emailing, but generally on the phone with them on, if not a daily basis, every few days. And I will say as well that Tim Bunnell from the Chancellor's Office has been intimately involved with us on the financial aid awarding side of that entire relationship. The Osher Foundation has been extremely involved with us in not just the fundraising aspects or the gift that they have made and the challenge that they've laid out, but also on the awards of the financial aid to the students. Every bit of the detail in terms of the qualifications of the students, the application process, the disbursement of funds throughout the colleges and ultimately directly to the students. They've been very deeply involved with us in all of those aspects as well, much more so than a traditional funder would be. And both the Chancellor's Office and some financial aid directors from throughout the state have worked directly with us and with the Osher Foundation on that aspect as well. So literally we are in touch with them on an ongoing basis, today included. They were the first ones to receive the Edison release today. So they're very excited and heartened by that news. And actually a letter from the president of the foundation is already on its way to both the Edison International CEO and Ambassador Vasquez as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our last report of the day before public comment is Vice Chancellor Mian. I've cleared almost 2 full hours for you. You think you'll need that long?
I hope not.
Okay.
But thank you for the thought, Madam President.
Just in case.
Members of the Board of Governors, Madam President, Chancellor Scott, my informational issue or item to discuss with you was a holdover from the last Board of Governors meeting, which Member Perez asked for a preliminary report on where we are as far as the consolidation and the rebidding of all of the grants associated with the Economic and Workforce Development Program for 2010, 2011. Just by way of background, as the board is very well aware, that program, like the other categorical programs that have been referenced earlier today, EOPS, DSP&S, et cetera, has been reduced by over 50%, the Economic and Workforce Development Program. Faced with that budget cut, and also faced with the fact that this program comes up for reauthorization by the legislature in 2013, with the mandated review of the program beginning in 2011, we made the decision to basically rebid all of the grants that had been associated with that program for the purpose of consolidating and strengthening the program so that we would have some deliverables to evaluate beginning in 2011. As I mentioned to the board on previous occasions, it's difficult to expect any results of any worthwhile note when your funding has been cut back as drastically as this funding has for this program. So the intent of the restructuring and consolidation efforts is outlined on page 2 of your information item. The results are going to be that there's going to be fewer centers and hubs to deliver these programs, but the centers and hubs that would be awarded will be fully funded at the 2008-2009 level. So rather than having these centers and hubs continue to operate at 50% capacity, you'll have fewer hubs at 100% funding. And the centers and hubs will be more focused on performance outcomes and sustainability, and I might add accountability as well, because I'm interested in seeing that these deliverables are actually produced by the centers and hubs as well as you. And I think that the whole process is going to result in a reinvigoration of the Economic and Workforce Development Program. We're going to see better alignment and better positioning of those initiatives so that we can, in fact, look to see that these deliverables are being provided and there's going to be better accountability through the program. So, you know, one of the things that we are hoping for as a result of this rebidding, and the rebidding just was announced in December, and the grant applications are not going to be due until next month. I think at the next board meeting I can give you a further update on the process as we have progressed to that point. But you can see this, the entire program and the rebidding of these grants is a process and a huge institutional machinery that has to get geared up to do this, as well as, you know, read and evaluate and score the applications and then notify the winners. It's a several-month process. The question has come up from some of the districts that, given the fact that these budget cuts are in place till 2013, and as Vice Chancellor Skinner and I recently informed the field, you know, these amounts that are allocated to the categorical programs are in place until 2013. What's the point of rebidding? Well, the point of rebidding is that we're hopeful that this budget language will be cleared up for 10-11 so that we can begin to focus on the deliverables part of our program. Obviously, if that is unsuccessful, then all of this effort will have been for naught, and I will not be happy. But, and neither will all of you. But the fact of the matter is, we have a process that we have to go through in order to get to where we want to go. And that process is going to require budgetary language that allows us this opportunity. We're going to fight for that budget language for 10-11, but it's not a guarantee that we will in fact get it. So I'm trying to be realistic in my remarks to you. At the same time, I want to show that we are being responsive. We are taking ownership of this program. We have to do certain things to get it in place to be evaluated by 2011. So, having said all of that, I don't know if you have any specific questions that you'd like to ask me about the program and where we are currently. But as I said, the RFAs were just released last month. They're due in February. We should be able to be in a position to notify the winners in March. And assuming that we do get the budget language for 2010, 2011, we'll be able to stick with that schedule. If the news is dire and we are unable to get free of that restrictive budget language, there's always a clause in these grants saying, assuming that there's funding, adequate funding provided, you've won. So we will have our exit strategy covered. But in any event, if you have any questions that you want to ask me, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Well, thank you. That was
Thank you. Short and sweet.
a helpful report. Okay, well, we're done a little bit early. Oh, I'm sorry. I have two things we need to do. One is comments from the public.
Dr. Don Singer, San Bernardino Community College District, a member of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you. President Malumet, members of the board, Chancellor Scott. As he said, I'm Don Singer. I'm a locally elected member of the board of the San Bernardino Community College District and also a member of the board of directors of the CCCT. And I was glad to hear during the discussion very early this morning, it seemed longer than that because you have been here for some time, that Member McDonald, I believe, and others talked about the need to establish a greater relationship between the league, of which CCCT is a group, and this board. Having been a staff member for many years and now a member of a local board, as well as a member of CCCT, I have long recognized that we all need to work together to solve our common problems. And we're all part, to use the cliche, of a common system toward which we want to strive to do even better than we are. And so I appreciate Member McDonald's comment. Hopefully he speaks for all of you. And I pledge myself as a member of the CCCT board to go back to talk to Scott, our executive, and to members of the CCCT board to see how we can establish a better, stronger relationship between the two groups. Another comment was made, or a series of comments was made about accreditation. This is an area which is of great concern to local board members as well as others. I know having been privileged to go on many accreditation visits, have been concerned, frankly, about the lack of board membership on those visits. I think board members add a unique and different perspective. And so, therefore, we have a group at CCCT led by Jeanette Mann from Member Baum's district to work on an ad hoc committee to ask how can we again strengthen the relationship so it's not an adversarial one, which it need not be, but one toward which we work toward common goals. So I guess I'm here to say that as a member of the CCCT board, I applaud you for your interest, for your time, for your resources, for coming and being here so long, and to pledge myself as a member of the CCCT board to work with you. As you know, we have been asked as members of the CCCT board to come to these meetings. Jeanette was at your last meeting. I can't recall who was coming, but we then come back. I will come back to our CCCT board in a couple of weeks and talk about those things that we have heard, I have heard, so we can work together. On a personal note, I was very interested in Peter Landsberger's comments about Compton because as a result of former Chancellor Drummond's efforts and perhaps former Senator Scott's efforts, there are now 2 members from community colleges on the FCMAT board, of which I am one. Fred Harris is the other. So I have heard and read with chagrin, to say the least, about the FCMAT reports about Compton. I'm glad to say that in the ones that I read most recently, as Peter pointed to you, so positively that has changed. And I am hoping for a number of reasons, not the least of which so that Compton becomes once again ruled by local trustees, that it can at some point remove itself from the auspices, although it's done so well by El Camino, and becomes a fully accredited college once again. So let me once again thank you for your efforts, and I pledge myself as a local board member and a member of the CCCT board to work with all of you so that we can achieve those goals toward which we want. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chancellor Scott would like to share something.
Well, Don and I go a long way back. We were both vice presidents of instruction back in the 70s.
Right.
So, and we both have the gray hair to show it.
You have more than I, sir.
Don was, what'd you say?
You have more than I, sir.
Oh.
I wish I had your.
Well, that's strictly genetics, Don.
Maybe it's that administrative meetings I had to attend for so long.
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, and Don has been was a great president, and I really appreciate his comment. You know that Member McDonald said something about that this morning, and it made me stop to think. I thought, wonder if it might be good if we just had one of the breakout sessions at the CCLC would have members of the Board of Governors sitting there, and maybe people attending, and we could have some kind of dialogue back and forth. I don't know how to do it, but I appreciated that comment that there might be ways by which the Board of Governors could have, not a particularly prominent role, but at least a role in which there could be some dialogue if people wanted to see who these creatures were that were members of the Board of Governors. And so that might be one way to do it. But we could explore some other ways. And, of course, obviously, you mentioned Jeanette Mann, and Jeanette and I are very close personal friends. She has the onus of being one of those who hired me at Pasadena City College back in, let's see, when I began in 1987. So I've known Jeanette a long time. But anyway, I appreciate these comments, and perhaps we can explore some ways that we could have even a closer relationship. Scott Lay and I have frequent conversations about common matters, and I do attend the CEO board meeting, and I'm going to be speaking at the trustees conference in January 25th. But anyway, I appreciate that comment, Don.
Well, Chancellor Scott, as you say, we knew to do that, and I certainly, from my part, will talk to Scott, and you and your staff can do that, because I think it is important. And as the Chancellor pointed out, given my long experience, as the Chancellor pointed out, my lack of hair shows that, in community colleges, I have some knowledge about your group and what you do. I would say in all honesty, however, that some of the board members of CCCT do not. And I dare say, without asking you, and I shan't at this point because of lateness and other things, you might not have the degree of expertise that we might want in terms of your knowledge of CCCT. So I do think it would be valuable for both of us to work together. Thank you very much.
I have been working on this already. A few of my board members have mentioned about us having a reception or a place where people can come. So I have that down to talk to Scott. I was just waiting until our meeting. And then in the back of my mind, I remembered that we used to do a retreat with the league, but I couldn't quite remember it. And it turns out that when Kay Albiani was on our board, she might have been president of the league at that time. What the retreat was a lovely, long, leisurely barbecue at her home. So I asked her today, and she said yes, she'd be more than happy to do it. So we're already working on that, which is
that was great. Yes.
Not a formal retreat,
Right.
but a place where the two groups can go. You can meet each other, talk, and we're tentatively looking at September. So I've already got that in the back of my mind.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Might I also comment, Chancellor Scott, the notion of having some of our members at a CCCT meeting at a breakout session, that has occurred in the past.
Oh, good.
But it occurred in the past when Kay Albiani and I were, as people who are all, have access to that group, did that. I think it'd be useful to have non-trustees as a part of that group as well for such a breakout session, and have it involve a little more than just a couple of trustees.
Good thought.
Not just.
I will talk to him about how we'd like to do it. Or I was perhaps envisioning I'll call it a cocktail hour, but not really, just a place where all of us would be, that they could come in and talk to us, right? Not even
More-
competing with their breakout sessions.
I think that's probably, you get more of us, and
Right.
you get more of the kind of dialogue. that
Right,
they
right.
would
So
want.
I will talk to him, absolutely. Any other comments or thoughts? Well, thank you very much. And no more members of the public. I was asked to announce that the Classified Employee Award has instructions and applications that are found on our website. So if people are interested in having people apply, we're ready for it. They have to be in by March 10th. And the awards will be presented May 4th at our meeting. And of course, and Jerry knows the answer to all your questions about that. So our meeting is over here. Before I adjourn it, would you like to share the evening?
Before we formally adjourn the meeting, I will make an announcement that the board will meet in closed session tomorrow morning, so that the board will not convene in open session and go into closed session. The closed session is being announced right now.
At 8:30 a.m.?
At 8:30, and then the public session will be immediately thereafter, so sometime after 8:30, probably approximately 9:30, but we don't know for certain.
Sounds good.
And-
Oh, no, the closed session?
Yeah, it wanna be in this
The
room.
closed session will be, I believe, will be up where we have lunch. Is that right? Yeah, up on the 4th floor. And then tonight we are having dinner, a reception and dinner at the Rio City Cafe. And it is at 5:30 to 6:30 for cocktails and appetizers. And we're scheduled to have the van pick you up at 5:15 at the hotel. I'm wondering how many people are driving themselves or need a van ride. If there aren't a whole lot of people, I don't like driving that van around more than I have to. So it's about 10 blocks. And
You might want the van on the way home.
yeah.
So how many people will be in the van to go to the restaurant tonight?
Okay. All right.
Group. Okay, thank you. Well, on that note, we're adjourned until 8:30.